Welcome to our show, and we're going to talk about Innovation Triangle today. And today with us is our speaker, and his name is Audit Harmony. And thank you for coming.
Thank you, Diana.
Yes, so we're talking about Innovation Triangle, that is Silicon Valley, China, and Israel. And how come we come out this triangle?
So Israel is a very interesting technological hub. China is very interested in Israeli technology for years. And Israel is also interested in China. But it's very hard to do it directly. Cultural gaps. Most of the Israeli companies who moved directly to China doing joint ventures, they failed. And there's a very big and strong community of Chinese Americans who know and understand the business culture of the West and of China.
Yes.
And it's easier to do it through Silicon Valley. People like you understand both sides. People who understand the investors on one side, the companies, the market.
Yes.
And what is going on now is that for years in Israel they didn't capture China in the right way. They looked at China always as a manufacturing side, as a source for capital. But I think what we are seeing now is a new generation that understands that China is a big market and need to address China as a market.
Yeah, that's why we have Audit here, and he's even got a Chinese name named He Dade. So he's an investor and entrepreneur, and also he's an advisor for many of the startups, including China companies.
Yeah.
Right. So tell us about your background.
So I've been an investor for about 13 years. In between, I headed the Israeli Venture Capital and High-Tech Association, which is the largest organization that represents the whole ecosystem of Israel, from R&D centers, foreign R&D centers, and there are 300 foreign R&D centers in Israel, from Facebook, Google, Apple, Samsung.
Top companies in the world.
All the big companies. When you drive in Israel, you see all the big names that we see here in Silicon Valley. All the big VCs, Sequoia, Accel, Benchmark, incubators, accelerators, angels, academy, and startups.
What is the driving force behind the Israel people? Why they are so innovative? And we really admire that.
Thank you. I think, well, Israel is a small country. People think that Israel is, some people think that it's a 100 million people.
It's a holy place, you know.
It's a holy place, but it's a small place.
Yes.
It's a very small place. It's only 8 million people. But they make a lot of noise.
Oh, they make a huge noise, and they give, like, look at Silicon Valley. Top 10 leading companies, and 5 of them are
Jewish.
Yeah, Jewish, yes.
So not all Jewish are Israelis, but the whole Jewish population is about 30 million people, including, I think, somewhere like 15% of Nobel Prize winners. Many of the startups that we see here have been founded by Jewish people, like Oracle, Facebook, LinkedIn, and others. What makes Israeli more innovative is, first of all, we don't have a domestic market. So we don't have other options. We need to think out of the box and to export it and to work with other markets. So this is one reason. The other reason is very strong academy and the army. The army is a secret sauce. So
army, the secret sauce?
Yeah, I think so, because the technological units in the Israeli army are very sophisticated, and people come from the same units as a group, and they form startups. So you can see famous security companies like Checkpoint, Imperva, even, I believe, part of Palo Alto Networks. Those are people who came from very specific units in the Israeli army and formed together a company. Israel is together today, Israel is 16% of the whole cybersecurity market in the world. And it's a dual use. So if you use navigation for missiles, you might use it to put a pill in your body and understand where you have a problem in your inside your body, for example. So those kind of dual use are being used in Israel.
We're talking about the triangle. And have you been to China?
I've been several times in China, I think 6
so
or 7.
What's your observation?
First of all, I came to China first time in 2000, and then I was shocked, and now I was even had a bigger shock. It's amazing to see this country.
What
it's amazing.
shocked you most?
I think that China and people don't understand it in the US because Silicon Valley is very self-centered. They don't see much beyond Silicon Valley, but in many ways China is more developed than Silicon Valley in payments, in mobile, in internet.
They are more advanced in the world, I would say.
WeChat is the best messaging system that I know. And by the way, Tencent based WeChat on an Israeli company called ICQ. It was invented in Israel. So this was the first instant messaging app in the world. And Tencent is just improving it to amazing ability.
Because a bigger market in China.
It's a bigger market, it's more sophisticated. There are people that the first phone is mobile phone. And they don't have to get adopting to the first generation, second generation. They started with iPhone. It's a generation of iPhone. They don't need credit cards. They can pay with WePay, whatever.
Yeah, right nowadays, American and China, the two biggest economic center, and is really the most, we know they're the smartest people. But you just mentioned that the Silicon Valley's people are the more self-centered, right? So how does these self-centered people working with the smartest people and also working with the big China?
So because Israeli companies have no domestic market, they must move to a market. The biggest challenge that we will have, and I think this is the biggest opportunity, currently those companies are going to the American market. They feel more comfortable. Sometimes China has a better market fit than America.
They have a bigger market in China, but it's not as comfortable as here in the United States.
And this is
why is that? What's the reason?
So there's some obstacles that are obvious, like language barriers, business culture barriers.
The mindset.
The mindset.
Yes.
Short-term relationship versus long-term relationship. But I think that if we it starts with trust. You need trust.
Yes.
And you need to have the same incentives. So I think there are 4 ways to have those things better and faster.
What is the 4 ways?
So in my way, the way I look at it, China is losing a competition on the most advanced and innovative products because the life cycle of a product is that in the first 3 to 5 years, you will have only one market to focus on. A company can focus on more than one market and will naturally decide to go to the most convenient market, not the best market, the most convenient market. So 95% of the companies in the US and in Israel go to the US market. But as you ask, the 4 elements that are needed is first of all a bigger market fit. If we will see that there's a bigger market fit, this is the first thing. And Industry 4.0, robotics, sensors, AI, VR, drones, some of them have better market fit in China than in America. Healthcare, nanotechnology, agri-tech, and those things. The second thing, we need funding from China. Because when a CEO of Israeli CEO, an American CEO goes to his board and say, I want to pick China as my first market, they will look at him and say, are you crazy? It's committing suicide.
Committing suicide.
In a way. I mean, you need to have the comfort of doing it. One of those ways to do it is getting funding from China. And getting funding from China is also important because it lowers the risk of IP, that your IP will be stolen. Because one of the biggest fears of companies today moving to China is about the IP. And the third thing, you need to find the right partners. This is the most important part. There are so many bright people that I meet in China, every visit that I have. And we just need to find the right ways to partner with them.
Yes. How do you define the right partners?
This is the $1 million question. I think this is why it comes from Silicon Valley. I have a very strong relationship with people who lived here or live here right now. And I understand them, they understand me, and they have very strong connections in China. So the trust that we have they take the trust to their people in China, and I take the trust to my people in Israel. And this is why it's a triangle.
Yeah, when you're talking about that, we have to thank a person who brought you here. That's Peng Zhan. Yeah, he's the person that has a good connection and brought you here. But you know, we're talking about this triangle: Silicon Valley, China, and Israel. And what do you see in the trend of the investment?
So, first of all, there's a lot of hunger in China for innovative products. We see a lot of investors coming from China. But sometimes they translate the investment in a different way that we translate.
How different?
The terms sometimes are different. In the West world, angel investment means the first investment. In
That's
China,
true.
angel investment is A round. So it's just sometimes terms.
Yes.
And understanding that this is a long-term relationship. So if you're not behaving right in the first round, no one will make business with you afterwards. So
Yeah.
it's
So
very important.
you're out.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
out in Silicon Valley for sure.
Yes.
But I think the Chinese and the Israelis have a very strong potential because Israeli is very technologically oriented. Silicon Valley is very consumer oriented or users oriented. And Chinese look for technology. They want to grow China to be the best economy and the best manufacturing, the best growing economy. And Israel can provide some of those elements. And it needs money. And China has money. So it's a very good match. And we see it also here in Silicon Valley. I mean, there's much more openness for Chinese investors than it used to be. Yet the Chinese community is very isolated. It's still
Yes.
closed.
They are very modest and they are
They're very
very
modest.
conservative. Yes.
And they need to assimilate. They need to be part of Silicon Valley. Just if you look at the Jewish people or the Indian American people.
Why Jewish people are so open and they're so easy to, access to the different communities?
I think Jewish people lived here for many years, so
Their influence is huge here.
it is. It's anywhere. I think they are very similar to Chinese in the way they.
What's the similarities between Chinese culture and Israeli culture?
All of them have good heart.
Yes. Hardworking.
Hardworking.
Yes.
But they put education as the most important part.
That's true.
They put the family, and they understand that hardworking. I mean, if you go to some places in the world, you see startups, but they work half of the time than they work in Israel and in China. In Israel, for example, when you go at 6 and 7 and 8 p.m., you still see lights in all the windows. You see the parking lots full of cars. Also in Silicon Valley in some places.
Yeah, Silicon Valley is also a
Also-
hardworking place.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also in China.
Yes.
You won't see it in other places in the world.
You
So
go
the-
to Europe and some place you see the difference.
If you go to Scandinavia, they work half of the time. So Israelis in that sense they are very similar to Chinese. Even Chinese do it even better, I think. They do better education these days. They do better work. And I think people will be surprised to understand how China becoming innovative hub of its own. It just took some years to do it, but it's closing the gap, and in sometimes it's just much faster than the
I
rest
think,
of the world.
what China has been doing is amazing because you and me both went to China and we see this huge change. But the world doesn't know. They still think that China was the old way. So what do you see the Chinese innovations, especially,
I think it's, first of all, it's young generation using things for the first time and in a different ways that others using it. So if my parents used a landline and then moved to cell phones, and I started with landline and also moved to cell phone, my son started with cell phone, right? In China, there are 20 years old people who started with cell phone. They understand how to use it in better ways that I will understand. And this is why we see this kind of innovation very, very strong in China. But we still need to see more innovation in semiconductors. For example, you know this space very well. China is still in a way back in semiconductor, for example.
Yeah. So you are also an investor and you are part of the Jewish angel, right?
Yeah.
J Angel.
J Angel.
J Angel. So what do you do at J Angel?
So I founded J Angels a year ago. And I'm the chairman of this group. It's a unique group, very, very powerful. It has very strong Jewish and Israeli people.
What do you
Silicon
mean
Valley.
by very powerful?
So we have partners, current and former partners from leading VCs such as Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia, Bessemer, Accel, Lightspeed, and we have very strong families who invest in tech. But I think the most important part, beyond being like 40% VCs with a lot of experience, and those are the ones who invested in Google, in Alibaba, in Palantir, in Uber, in Lyft, and others, is that we have a lot of people who've been C-level executives here. So we have VPs from Facebook, from Google, from HP. We have serial entrepreneurs. Those people bring a lot of experience and different opinions and understanding. So one could be a CTO of a company like McAfee, and another one could be one of the leaders of Intel. And so if we need someone to understand in semiconductor, we will ask, obviously, someone who invested in semiconductors for 30 years, or someone from Intel or Qualcomm that are part of the cloud. But if we do something in security, we have people who this is their expertise. So it's very powerful. We see amazing deal flow, because the members of the club are bringing this deal flow, and some of it is my deal flow. And we're expanding all the time for this kind of community. It's a community. This is the most important thing.
Yes. So what do you see the collaboration between Israel and China and Silicon Valley in the next 5 or 10 years?
So I think there are a few stages. First, the question is how we bring those companies, instead of the US market first, to the China's first. Some of them, the ones that are relevant for China first. How do we do it? And if we will open this bridge in the right way, we will see a stream of companies from Silicon Valley and from Israel in IoT, in VR, in AR. In AI, the most innovative ones coming to China. So this is something that can be doable if there will be people who bridge the two, or this triangle. I think there's a problem between Silicon Valley and America, Silicon Valley and China, sorry, and there's a problem between Israel and China. And we need to find the right ways to bridge between the two. And we need to think cross-border, and to have more people that will be involved with cross-border. I'm doing it because I believe, I'm a big believer. I think China is a big sun, and I think America is big earth, and we are a big moon, Israel. I mean, and this triangle of those stars create a very unique dynamic.
So the sun and earth and the moon all together. But how that is going to change the Silicon Valley, change those self-centered people's mind?
I think they won't have any choice. Is the internal competition creates a situation where you need to look outside. Also, sources of capital. China has now a new fund of $30 billion fund. They have more new LPs that we see. There is interest, and there's available capital. The question how you bring it from China to Silicon Valley, how you bring an RMB fund to a dollar fund.
Yes.
But we are thinking now about having Chinese investors working with them and help them open to get exposed to the right deals in Silicon Valley and Israel. So it's all the time in the making. I think you need to invest in VCs, you need to invest directly in companies. You need to know to have patience. You need to understand that scaling up is quality and not quantity. Many of the Chinese that I meet build big incubators, but there are very, very few companies in those incubators. The right thing is how to bring them, not to fill big spaces.
Yeah, it's a quality, not a quantity.
And I think this is the most important.
It's I would say the power. It's not the size.
Right.
Yes.
And this is where Israel is always strong. Israel is not a big country and not big. There aren't so many startups in Israel. We are very strong in per capita. We have more Nobel Prize winners per capita. We have more research per capita. We have more VCs per capita. We have more startups per capita. But the absolute numbers are not so big. But it's a quality. And if you bring those quality to China, you can make a dramatic change in the economy. And also from Silicon Valley. But Silicon Valley have an option to stay here. Israeli companies have no option. They don't have a domestic market. They must go outside. How do we catch them? How do we bring them to China? And this is the challenge. And if we will bypass this, everything is possible.
Yeah, I think that that the opportunities and challenges are ahead of us, and depends on how we handle this and what the angles we see the things between the culture and put this value to this triangle.
Yes, and I can tell you personally that in the past year I was more active with the Chinese market and with the Chinese community in Silicon Valley. I started using WeChat just a year ago.
Oh, you're using WeChat. How many WeChat friends do you have?
I think I have like 200 or
200,
something like that.
Okay.
Maybe more.
Yes, good. But mostly they're texting in Chinese, right?
So they use English for me, but sometimes it's hard for me to. I need to
if you
tag the names because I don't remember how it is in Chinese.
Yes.
I'm going to start to learn Chinese more. As I told you, my son is learning Chinese.
Your son is learning Chinese. You told me that at 50% or 40% of his class is Chinese.
Yeah, here in Los Altos.
Los Altos, 40% of his classes are Chinese.
And they learn Chinese in kindergarten.
Oh, that's
they learn
amazing.
Mandarin.
That's amazing. Why you send him to learn Chinese at such a young age?
I think it's amazing. I think that I hope he will be able to teach all of us. And his generation understand that this is the most important language, just in English. And I think this is part of the change that we are facing now. We see a lot of Chinese people here, very intelligent one, very innovative one. They need to be taking more stronger positions in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, they
and
should.
Get out of the community and open up.
They should, but why they're not?
I think this is something that I would ask you, I think.
Yeah, I would, well, we always admire the strengths and the Israeli people have, and I think Chinese people, they are very careful on the things, and they just take one step at a time, and
they're more shy of thinking.
They're the most shy of thinking. That's true. Yes.
But you will be surprised that also the Israelis are not so open. It's comfort zone. The comfort zone is to speak Chinese one to another, speaking Hebrew, our language, one to another. But we came to Silicon Valley because this is the melting pot.
Yes.
We are here to be part of Silicon Valley, not to be. I'm going to many conferences of the Chinese community and investors. Many times I'm the only non-Chinese in the room.
You're the only non-Chinese?
Sometimes, many times.
Well, that means you're really brave. You are working out of your comfort zone.
I think this is, well...
But how do you feel when you are around Chinese people? You are the only non-Chinese people. How do you feel at that moment? Will you feel nervous? Will you feel uncomfortable or anything?
I feel the most comfortable.
Oh, most comfortable.
Yeah, because I think, first of all, it's most rewarding. You see things that other ones don't see.
Yes.
What is to be a VC? VC is your access to good deal flow. And having access to good deal flow is not going only to YC demo days or 500 startups. We all do it. So we all see the same deal flow, right? How do you see things from side roads?
Yes.
I can tell you a story. When I came to Silicon Valley, I said, okay, I'm representing a very wealthy family. What makes us different? Money is not a problem in Silicon Valley, so what makes us different? And I said, I knew a lot of people in Silicon Valley. All Sandy Road, I knew many partners in the VCs. But I still didn't have any added value. And I started looking at Silicon Valley in a way of anthropology. And anywhere I went, I've seen Indian American from India. In all positions, you go to Google, you meet 4 or 5 of the 6 people that you meet are all Indian Americans, very bright people. But they are part of Silicon Valley. The CEO of Microsoft, the CEO of Google today, CEO of Adobe, the CEO of SanDisk, they're all Indian Americans.
Yeah, Indian Americans.
And I said, how do I connect to them? So I met the president of Thai Angels at the time, that later became the president of Thai. And Thai is a great...
Indian group, yes, high-tech
It's amazing. It's the biggest, the largest entrepreneurship network in Silicon Valley.
Yes.
And he invited me to come to one of the angel meetings of Thai Angels. And I saw amazing deal flow. Why? Because 1/3 of all the startups that are being formed in Silicon Valley by non-American guy are Indians. 1/3, it's a lot. And then you see that in everywhere there are good Indian entrepreneurs. So I said, can I bring you non-Indian investors? Said, yes, of course, we are open.
Yeah, it's great.
The next time I brought 20 non-Indian investors and few Indian investors that never been to Thai Angels.
Oh, it's great.
And then he said, you know what? You know so many people. Why won't you be on the screening committee of Thai Angels? And I became part of the screening committee, and I've been there for 4 or 5 years. And then I became a charter member. I was in the last ThaiCon event, a co-chairman of one of the tracks. So I'm very much involved with this.
Never afraid of to explore to the new field.
Exactly. And a couple of days ago, the reason why I remember this, I got an email from a friend of mine from China that they're doing a big conference here, and he said, Odin, can you help us bring some Indian Americans and Israelis here?
So you are bringing Indian
I need to bring now
Americans.
Indian
Yes, not
because
only
I know
Israel,
lots of
yeah.
people from the
Yes,
Indian Americans.
that's
But
right.
those are communities. Same goes with women.
Yes.
I remember the first time I was invited to an NG club only for women. I didn't remember
You
that
are
I
the
had
only
it.
man there, right?
I was the only man. And I got in and I suddenly noticed that I'm the only man around there. So I started to back off. And everybody said, no, get in.
Yes,
I
great.
said to myself, if this is a woman, she's either very, very successful of her own if she's there. People like you.
Thank you.
Or she's married to someone very successful. Either way, it's interesting, right?
That's true.
They have the understanding. So we need to think out of the box.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying. There are
Yes.
black holes. Those are the opportunities. If we go to where it's not convenient, we get out of our comfort zone. This is where you see opportunities.
It's great. So this innovation dialogue will end with what you said is so inspiring. Work out of your comfort zone. There's a black hole, but there's opportunities inside there. Don't afraid of. Just jump in. Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Audrey and He Dade, to our show, and I hope to see you next time.
Hope to.